Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Very happy that you decided to join us this afternoon. My name is Ella Jakubek-Grons and I'll have a pleasure of being your moderator for the upcoming 3 hours. We have a lineup of fantastic speakers, inspiring conversation, interesting presentations, and also some time for you to actually work and give input into the work of the project. We are here this afternoon hosted by the Lifelong Learning Platform and the partners of the In-School project. This is the event that is looking back at the 2 years of this project and also hoping to gather your input into the final document of the project. Let me quickly introduce my colleague Sven, who together with me will be supporting you in this event. He is the technical expert behind making sure that everything hopefully runs smoothly for us. Sven, could you please walk us quickly through some basic technical information?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. The subtitle of this event is The Road to Inclusion, and in order to make sure you can all be included in this meeting, I quickly would like to go over the different features of this WebEx meeting to make sure that we're all on the same level in order to participate. So on the bottom of your screen, you will see some buttons. And the first one, most on the left, is a button with a little microphone. It says mute next to it, or maybe the equivalent of that in your language. And I will count to 3. And then you can unmute and say, good afternoon, everybody, in your own language, and then mute again. Okay? 1, 2, 3, go. Wonderful. Well done. So whenever you are not speaking or making a contribution, make sure your microphone is off. So it's muted. And when you do need to speak, double check that it's on just before you start speaking. You, next to that little figure on the right where you have participants, you also have a small speech bubble. Yeah, you see a speech bubble. If you click on that, a chat will open, and quickly in the chat write where you are from. And that can be a city, it can be a country, it can be a region. It's up to you. I see there's somebody from York here, from Athens, Paris, Madrid, Poland, Palermo, Italy, Lithuania, Cyprus, Krakow in Poland, Greece, Romania, Budapest, Noordwijk in Holland, Scotland. My God, this is really diverse. Lots of people from Athens, Barcelona, Spain, Belgium. Okay, The Hague. That's really cool, such a diverse group. That being said, we've been through all the tools. I give the word to Eirini, and she will also welcome you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Ella. So, hello, everyone. I am Irini Careta. I am the EU Project Manager at the British Council, who is the coordinating organization of the Erasmus Plus funded project, the Inclusive Schools. The reason we are here today. So this event is marking the peak of efforts for the 2-year project that, despite the challenges, the many challenges, has thrived and managed to achieve many things. This is evident by your virtual presence here today. And I'd like to thank you all for your participation, your active participation. The people who are here today to share their insights and their contributions, the keynote speaker, the panelists, and all our colleagues and partners who have shared their sincere interest on inclusive education with us, and they keep working towards this path. So I'm going to share with you a couple of points regarding the project with our beloved Sean Williams. She's an inclusive education expert and has been a very crucial collaborator to the Inclusive Schools project, as she's the author of the Education Pack, the solid basis of all the methodology around the project. So she's now sharing her screen with all of us. I wanted to talk to you about the vision of the Inclusive Schools. The initial vision was how to embed inclusive education principles in schools management in Europe. And that was tried to do that by, sorry, there is an interruption. That's why I've paused. Now it's better. Thank you. So we've strived to accomplish this vision of how to embed inclusive education principles in schools management in Europe by forming pools of inclusion ambassadors, people who are interested in working in the classroom, people who are working in the school community, and tried to form pools of these people in each of the partner countries. We've tried to do that by setting and developing this education material that is comprised of very specific steps that Sean will describe to you just after that. But I would like also to present our partners. This is a consortium of 7 partners. Coordinating organization is the British Council, as I said, and the Lifelong Learning Platform, who are co-leading in this, the organization of this event today. OBESU, the Organizing Bureau of Student Unions across Europe. SCODEC, the Scottish Development Education Centre in Scotland. Asamblea Cooperación por la Paz, the Assembly Cooperation for Peace in Spain. Expedition Inside Culture in Poland. And the Institute of Education Policy in Greece. So, but we've got a lot more affiliated and associated organizations and schools across Europe in many other countries other than the partner countries. And we've cooperated through OBESU with a lot of student unions. We've cooperated with teachers and headmasters and school advisors from all partner countries. And this was not only the 5 of the consortium, but also Austria, Italy, Ireland, Romania, Finland, and Slovenia. So I'm going to leave it to our author of the Education Pack for introducing in-school methodology. Thank you, Sian.
Thank you, Irini, and thank you, everybody. It's lovely to be here. So my name's Sian Williams, and I'm just going to briefly introduce the Education Pack for the In-School project. So to start with, just some origins and where it's come from, and really it's come from kind of 2 places. The first place is the global and European inclusive drivers for inclusive education, some of which you can see here. And what connects these drivers is not just a human right to education, but a fundamental human right to quality education. And the second origin is in some of the values, the European values that underpin inclusive practice, so respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, respect for human rights, and also some inclusive school values that we commonly use in schools, some of which you can see here. So the purpose of the pack was to help schools think through the idea of giving children a more equitable experience of education, giving them what they need so that each of them has the same chance to experience school in the best way possible. And that was by removing barriers to inclusion, as you can see there on the right. And we were thinking about this from a broad perspective, focusing on all children and whatever needs they bring. So not just children with diagnosed special educational needs and disabilities. And we were also thinking very much from a social perspective as well as an academic one. So what we needed to do is to help schools stimulate thinking, because we easily get stuck in a particular way of thinking as educators. So firstly, we wanted staff to move away from thinking about the idea of average and different to average, because as you can see from the slide here, it's all too easy for those who are perceived to be different to be left at the margins of what we do in schools. So our aim was to help everyone in schools think about a new sort of average, if you like, that not just accepts diversity as the norm, but affirms it in all its richness. And yes, sometimes, as this picture kind of suggests, it's sometimes messy. Secondly, we wanted to help everybody in schools think maybe a bit differently about their role in creating inclusive cultures. And the social model of disability is really helpful here to stimulate thinking because of its clear message about our responsibility as educators to remove barriers to inclusion, rather than the problem being a child who needs fixing to become more average, if you like, and therefore more includable in the classroom, that it's actually down to us to change things to make sure that our environments are there for everybody. But this can seem quite overwhelming when you're starting out. So it's really important that we don't make people overwhelmed. So we stress the importance of inclusion as a process and looking at it as a journey. And it is a never-ending journey, that because children change, circumstances change, as we've seen in the last 8 months. And so it is just a kind of step-by-step journey, and making it like that, it makes it kind of a bit more manageable for people to cope with. Okay, so on a practical level, we worked with schools and we gave them two things, a tool for schools, which I'll talk about more in a minute, and also some classroom activities. So we gave them two sets of classroom activities, one for ages 9 to 11 and one for ages 12 to 15, although we encouraged people to look in the other pack if they felt they wanted something that was a bit more either complex or less complex. And there are 5 sets of activities per age group, which cover understanding diversity and inclusion. They cover inclusive values and actions. And then there's a kind of planning phase where children can plan some inclusive activities and put them into action in their school. And then the final bit is a review of what they've done, how it went, where they think they are now, and what they think needs to happen next in the school, which feeds into the actual tool for schools, which is why those green arrows are there, because there's a lot of feedback in between the classroom activities and the tool for schools. So it's very flexible how schools can use this. The classroom activities, they can be used on their own as standalone, or they flow through each area. Schools can do them when they want to. It's really quite flexible. There's no tech involved, although schools can add tech if they want. And there are various people. Before I talk about the phases, there are some key people that are involved in the program in schools. The first being a school lead, who is key. They're the person with the kind of strategic overview in the school. They have enough clout to make things happen. They probably have inclusion in their remit. And so, yeah, they're the person that leads the work in the school. Secondly, we set it up so that there's a critical friend who's somebody external to the school but knows the school, who works closely with the school lead in a supportive capacity, but is also able to ask some of the tricky questions that perhaps an insider wouldn't be able to ask. And then thirdly, there's a group in the school, a representative group that is made up of students, teachers, other staff, parents, and other relevant people from the community who are stakeholders for the school. And along with that lead person, they're the people that really make things happen and spread the work across the school. So the phases, just to give you a quick overview of what we gave schools in terms of leading them through the start of their journey, and it really was only to lead them through the start. So the first bit was about getting started, where this really project set up, but the main core for that was for the school to do this thinking about inclusion together, and to start to prioritise and decide on just one or two or three areas that they really wanted to concentrate on in order to move into phase 2, where they did a deep dive into those areas and to have a really good look at what was going on in those areas, and to be able then, once they got that information, to plan in phase 3, to make an action plan for what they actually wanted to do to improve things. Phase 4 was making it all happen, and then phase 5 was evaluating. But I just want to say something about evaluation. in that I made it really, we made it really quite light touch, and it's kind of a ritual throughout each of the phases. It wasn't, as you see here, a huge spanner to crack a nut, but it's important that the learning from each phase goes into the next phase. And then so finally, this evaluation phase also looks forward into the future in a way that's collaborative and brings everybody's views together, so the school can then decide what they want to do next and maybe restart the cycle. So I'm now going to hand over to Irini just to talk you through some of the outputs from the project and what actually happened.
So all this methodology that Shan has presented to you is included in our education pack, which is translated and expected to be translated in more languages, total 10 languages. The activities booklet, which is guides for the teacher to run an inclusion week in the school, and the online course for inclusion ambassadors that is currently led by Obesu until 30th of November. And this is a 4-module course based on the education material and includes a mentorship session in early December for those interested. I mean, registrations are closed now, but we will have them recorded. So as far as the key results, what was the outreach of our activities? So all these 2 years, since January 2019, when the project started, we've run 55 training sessions across the partner countries for teachers, school advisors, and students through Obesu. We've run direct workshops in 61 schools in Europe and supported many other schools through mentorship. We've reached out to 1,000 trainers, students directly, and more than 5,000 students indirectly through the project. So on behalf of the British Council and the strong partnership we set with inclusion as a vision, I hope you enjoy the event today, and we'll make it an interactive space with fruitful outputs. This will feed our recommendations to Ministries of Education and the European Commission, and we'll keep you posted for all the outcomes. So enjoy the afternoon, and I hope it's good for all of us. I'll leave it for our keynote speaker now. Thank you all.
I will now invite our keynote speaker. We have with us Cesar Bona.
Along these 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about pretty obvious themes. The two verbs we have most heard along last months are evaluate and test. But it is life who is testing us, and it is the system that we must evaluate. And there are other verbs we must not forget: learn, reflect, connect, listen, include. The circumstances we currently live have shaken the structures we were used to. And suddenly, the pandemic that seemed to be a simple health crisis turned into a global crisis at all levels. And many experts have been consulted from different fields: medicine, microbiology, virology, economy, geopolitics. And many answers have been given on how this will affect us and what needs to be changed in the different sectors. Well, and in education, all you can see, all you can imagine starts in education. Will we be content if children learn to keep the security distance, or if they understand the importance of wearing a mask in a proper way, or if they know how to use the hand sanitizer? Will it be enough, indeed? If we think of the tools we need in a normal life without pandemic, some ideas would come to our minds. For example, be able to connect content, the ability to interact with other people as social beings as we are, the potentiality of solve problems. We could think of respect to oneself, to other cultures, other opinions, and ethical and responsible use of technology, the skills to manage our emotions, or the care of our own health. School cannot be a bubble. I want them to learn how to coexist with other people, or to socialize, or to be upstanding citizens, to learn how to be happy. Obviously, it has to do with managing emotions. Then, if we really think these are the aims of the school, we must do our best to make them true, but not just for our sons or daughters, but for all children with no exceptions. And the last question, what school would you like if you were a child now? Or if you had the certainty that the society we want starts in the schools that we have? I want a school in which they learn to respect themselves, other people, other cultures, other thoughts, where they can learn about the respect for environment, they can acquire social commitment, or we can invite them to look through the window and they can change the world they live in. A school where we remind them that they are social beings, so we must teach towards dialogue and social harmony. I want a school where families, teachers, and children do participate, a place where health has real weight, or where they have more time to know each other, or we have more time to know them, where children and teachers grow thanks to the differences, a place where in the end, I would be willing to come back if I were a child. And you know what? I know you know, there are thousands of families and teachers who want this school. When I studied in primary, when I studied in secondary or at university, I learned so many things which then I could apply afterwards with children. I learned Spanish language, some English, some Latin, maths, science, Elizabethan theater. I learned about Huckleberry rate and ratio, rivers, mountains, materials, chemical reactions, verbs, rephrasings, biology, geometry, technology. But no one told me about human relationships. No one told me about managing groups of people, and this is what we do every day. Never was I told about differences. Taking all this into account, I have been teaching for 18 years. Now, look around you, literally, we are all different. We are dreams, worries, frustrations, hopes. Nearly 8,000 million people, and all different. Let's appreciate diversity. Being different is a gift, not a problem. This sentence should be written on every blackboard, at the doors, on the walls, on the ceilings, with neon lights, so that children learn one of the most important lessons they can learn in life. So the challenge is not only change structures, but above all, change the way we look at others. There can't be one that stays out, nor one who keeps invisible. And when I say this, I'm not just talking about different capacities. In my trips, I've had the chance to meet children who live in very difficult circumstances. Their families have no studies, and for many children, their expectations are marked by the roof their parent built. In one of these trips, after sharing one day with them, I went back to my hotel. I entered my room and sat on my bed. And staring off into space, with hundreds of images still in my head, I talked out loud as if talking to someone else and said, when was it that school turned into the judge who decides who can go forward or who cannot continue on this path, instead of being the giver of tools? Yes, those tools that we talked about 5 minutes ago for our sons and daughters. Another aim of education is that all children, and I repeat, with no exceptions, have the best of opportunities. And another objective as well is to make us grow individually, but above all, collectively, because we are social beings. Think of what you have done today, think what you did yesterday, or look at us now. Most actions we take are interactions with other people. Shouldn't that be at schools? In the end, this job of us is based on something that has little to do with innovation, the care for the human relationships, and to be able to connect with all that surrounds us. Every single child has something that all human beings share: the desire to be listened to, the wish to be useful, and the necessity to feel love. At home and at school, we must find places and times for children to get to know each other, because when you know the other, you change prejudices for a respectful coexistence. And then, how is it that many people consider a teacher is good if he or she manages to keep the classroom in silence. A school in which we don't invite to dialogue will educate people who can't dialogue. A school in which we don't teach about how to reach coexistence will educate people who can't coexist. If we don't educate on tolerance and respect, we will leave the door open for intolerance and disdain. This is why we must humanize education. And some may think, what are you saying? Even this is a redundancy, because we are already humans. And I will be happy to hear that, because it will lead us to other redundancies. For example, the expression innovative schools is a redundancy. Education in values seems a redundancy, or inclusive schools should sound like a redundancy. The challenge is to work together to close that circle so that redundancy is no longer necessary. Thank you for promoting these spaces of dialogue so necessary. Thank you for giving me the chance to stay here today, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Cesar. As you see, there are some reactions, some applause that you're getting, and also people saying already in the debate, someone saying, even if you're told or taught about human relationships, you acquire knowledge of them through experience. I hope that this is also what schools can be giving us. So thank you again for this inspiring keynote. We will invite all of you now, everyone, all 146 of us who are here, into a very small networking session, just to make sure that we are not 140 anonymous people behind our screens, but we have this human connection and we acquire this knowledge through relationships. We will have now 5 minutes of little breakout rooms. It will happen for you automatically. You will get a little pop-up window on your screen inviting you to join a breakout session. Please accept that invitation, click join. You will be randomly placed in a room with 5 different people, and this is your chance to build this human connection. Have a quick round of introduction with the people that you've been put together in a small room. Tell what brought you here, tell what your background is, and after 5 minutes, we will do it again so that you meet yet another couple of colleagues who are brought here together with you this afternoon. Sven, can I have us launch the networking, please? The breakout rooms will open now for all of you. And we are back. I hope everyone is here and you did have a small inspiring exchange with some colleagues. We will be now moving to our panel discussion. We have 5 panelists coming from different backgrounds, so we make sure that we have a diverse conversation. There will be space for you to also ask questions to the panelists, and to do it, we will use a tool called Slido. You can go to slido.com and type in school as the code of the event. You are also seeing now on your screen the access code. You can also scan the QR code with your mobile device. This is what we will be using to feed your questions in, so please don't put them in the chat as in Slido. You will also have the option to give a like to the question that you want to support and really hear the answer to. So we will know how many of the questions we can take. Probably not all of you, as I imagine you're quite an interested audience. So please express your interest in the questions from the people during the panel so that we can know which questions should we ask in the first place. Remember also that during this event and during the panel, you can share on social media using hashtag #InSchool, tagging our host lifelong learning platform, and so that we can also have quite some lively debate going across on social media. And now I would like to invite our panelists to hopefully join me, also spotlighted here on your screens. We have with us this afternoon Susanne Lonscherracke from Education Unit at the German Permanent Representation to the European Union. We have Guillaume Jagel from Unit Schools and Multilingualism at European Commission at the DG EAC. We have Annette De Vroey, the project manager of the project on teachers' professional learning for inclusion at European Agency for Inclusive Education. Edwin Katterberg is a consultant with the European School Heads Association, And we also have with us a representative from the Organizing Bureau of European School Student Unions, OBESU, Nadine Toy, who is the board member at OBESU. So all 5 panelists with us today representing policymakers, school education stakeholders. I would like to invite all of you in the first place to present yourselves quickly, telling us an example of your work on thematic of school inclusion. Zuzanne, would you start, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to this conference. And let me say that it was very nice having this short network sessions. That was very useful. Yes, so as I have been introduced, I work as an education policy officer at the German Permanent Representation to the EU. That means that I'm based in Brussels. And while we had our networking session, I was realizing that terms I use are not automatically understood by colleagues in the conference. So if you don't get what I'm use as a jargon, don't hesitate to ask. So the idea is that the Council, when I talk of the Council, this is all member states of the EU, and the Council has every 6 months a presidency, the EU presidency, and that is what Germany has right now since the 1st of July until the end of the year. And that's why we are very busy at the Perm Rep to work on all kinds of education and files in our unit. So I'm in the unit of education and research. And what has that to do with inclusion? It was the question. We work actually at policy level, at ministerial level, of course, with the member states. And we have defined priorities in education. And I would say that all files we are dealing right now, or we are now on the way of finalizing, have an aspect of inclusion. Because for me, it is a very transversal topic. So what we do is we have an education committee, and there we discuss all files on vocational education and training, digital education, the Erasmus Plus program, so that are, and the future European education area. So these 4 pieces of work, I can tell you, they're all, everywhere there is inclusion in it. I come back to that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Susanne. Guillaume, what's your take on example of your work on thematic of school inclusion?
Thank you. So hello, everyone. So I work at the European Commission, the DG EAC, in the unit for education and multilingualism. So our work is also a policy work. We work with inclusion, as Susanna Launcher say, it's a transversal topic for us as well. So we use inclusive school education and inclusion in all our policies. So since the adoption of the European Pillar of Social Rights by the European Council, the European Parliament and the Commission in 2017, the importance of inclusive education was highlighted. And we were, with respect of the principle of subsidiarity, to support member states through policy cooperation within the framework of the Education and Training 2020. And we can say that some of the examples of the work we have done are the Council recommendation on high quality early childhood education and care systems, the recommendation on key competencies and lifelong learning, or the Council recommendation on promoting common values, inclusive education, and European dimension of teaching. So that's some part of the policy work we do. We also have a monitoring to help the member states through the Education and Training 2020, and which has some indicators like the early school leaving, and you have the European semester where we give some advice. We also provide some kind of financing through the European Social Funds and the Erasmus Plus program. So we aim to continue this work with a new policy framework that will come after 2020. And if you see the European achieving the European education area by 2025, we will have a whole dimension that will be focusing on inclusive education and equality and gender equality. So and we will also promote an even more inclusive Erasmus program to finance some projects such as the one which is just finished now. So that's basically how the European Commission works with this topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Annette, what's your experiences that you can share with us from European Agency for Inclusive Education? As the name says, I imagine there is a lot. Can you give us a brief overview, please? Annette de Vroij.
Annette, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Very sorry. Okay, thank you for the invitation too. And as you introduced me, I work as a project manager at the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education. And the agency is an independent organization. We aim to act as a platform for collaboration for the ministries of education in member countries. And there are 31 member countries in the agency. Our mission is to help member countries to improve their inclusive education policy and practice for all learners, in line, of course, with international and European policy initiatives on education, equity, equal opportunities, and the rights for all learners. We have many key activities such as thematic work, country policy review and analysis, data collection and statistics, information dissemination, also the organization of conferences, workshops, meetings, also European and international cooperation, external consultancy work, and participation in peer learning activities or working groups. But you were asking for some examples of work that we have been done recently, or work on inclusive education very specifically. So I think I will focus on thematic projects that are currently going on. We have four projects related to school inclusion at this moment. One of them is the changing role of specialist provision in supporting inclusive education. Another one is on preventing school failure. Another one is on supporting inclusive school leadership. And then a project in which I am mainly involved now is the project on teacher professional learning for inclusion, which focuses on how policy can support the professional learning of teachers, and not only teachers, but all professionals who are involved in the development of inclusive schools, and not just in initial teacher education, but throughout teacher careers, to prepare all teachers for inclusive education. So this is as an introduction to some of our projects. I think this was important as key thematic projects to learn about.
Fantastic. Thank you. We will be asking more about this perspective of teacher preparation. I want to pass now to Edwin and hear how Esha from the work of School Heads Association is working on inclusion at schools. Edwin?
Yeah, I hope everybody can hear me. I represent ESHA, the European School Heads Association. We have over 45 member organizations, which have their members are about 82,000 school heads. Our aims are to professionalize the work of school heads. A second pillar would be innovative education, and the last pillar that we focus on since very recently is the well-being of pupils. In terms of specific inclusion projects, we always do over approximately 10 to 12 projects each year, and we are currently working on specific inclusion projects such as Multi-Include, which has quite a similar approach to In School. And then I personally have worked on three other projects, which is one is called GEM, Gender Equality Matters, which is basically to ensure that there is gender equality, but also that bullying stops, in particular for the LGBTI community. Secondly, I've been working on Upper, which is about education inspiring peace. Of course, this is about inclusion of also minorities, etc., etc. And the last project that I am doing personally for ESHA is called Child Up, which is about integration. Of course, we would like to hear the word inclusion of immigrant children into the school network in Europe. And that's it for me, basically.
Wonderful, thank you. Nadine, please tell us from the school students' perspective, what are you doing on school inclusion?
Hi, my name is Nadine. First of all, can I just say, thanks so much for inviting me onto the panel today. I'm very honored to be here. So I am a board member of the Organising Bureau of European School Student Unions, or OBESU. So OBESU is like the umbrella body for your school student unions in Europe. So we kind of during the year we have meetings between our member organizations. So we'll have different conferences and trainings and statutory meetings throughout the year. So personally, I've been working on inclusion since 2017, which was actually my first OBESU event as well, which is when I first got involved with working on inclusion. It was very nice. That was my first OBESU event as a participant, so it was quite nice. But OBESU in general works quite a bit on inclusion. It's one of it's a huge part of our work. It's a big portfolio. So of course, we do work with InSchool, and we have had trainings with our members and different projects being run through the InSchool project, and we also worked with Seeds for Integration with kind of inclusion of immigrant and migrant students. So what we kind of do a lot of is train our member organizations and the members of our member organizations to be able to kind of implement inclusion in their own societies, as well as ensuring that our own organizations are also being inclusive at all times. So that's it for me. So pass it back to Ella.
Thank you, Nadine. Don't disappear, because I'm going to take now your answer first for the second question, as I want to hear first from the students on this one. There are many challenges for inclusion, right? We can talk about integration of inclusion in teacher education. We can talk about inclusion of disadvantaged students, of participation of students in the community, in school governance. We can talk about the political context to inclusion. What is for you the main inclusion-related challenge in schools, and why?
I think, from my experience, I think it's it very much differs depending on what area or what place we're looking at. But in general, it just seems that people who are disadvantaged or come from disadvantaged backgrounds or are from a different circle of people are often just disadvantaged in general when it comes to education. So you can look at migrants or refugees. You can look at people who come from socioeconomical a low socioeconomical background. You can look at LGBTQ plus students. But I think what the common understanding is that sometimes these students don't feel comfortable in school, or don't feel included, or as if they're able to participate in discussions and lessons in school. And I think this is the main challenge that faces students, that for whatever reason it might be the other students or the teachers, or whatever the reason is that these students don't feel comfortable in school. Sometimes they might end up missing school or becoming early school leavers. But I think that the main it all stems from these students who are not included, and for whatever reason they don't feel happy in school, they don't feel comfortable there, and so they can't grow and flourish there and learn what they can. They're not able to get out of school what other students who may not come from the same kind of backgrounds are able to get from school. So I think this is probably the main issue that leads to a lot of other issues, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Annette, from your work with teachers, what do you think is the main inclusion-related challenge in schools? Annette?
Sorry, okay.
There you are with your microphone, great.
Yes, I think there are two main challenges. The first challenge, I think, in schools is well, I already mentioned the project on teacher professional learning, in which we focus on the teacher professional learning at all stages of a teacher career. And this is really a huge challenge, even if we regard to prepare teachers for inclusion before they start in school. So in teacher education, there should be much more focus on teacher education for inclusion in policy and in practice during a teacher career. We found that there are really gaps in teacher professional learning for inclusion for beginning teachers. There are gaps in teacher professional learning on every topic, almost in induction. So we found that there is not so much induction, but in particular for inclusive education, it's very important to have teacher professional learning opportunities continuing immediately after teacher education. Also, there were gaps for teacher educators. And teacher educators are not just teacher educators from higher education institutions, but also school leaders, also mentoring teachers. So this is also an issue which is important to know, that there is a big need for teacher professional learning or professional opportunities on inclusive education for all staff in inclusive schools, also for specialists, for support teachers. And so the second challenge there has to do with that as well. It is about collaboration. Because inclusive education requires a transition to much more collaboration among staff, much more collaboration with external support staff, internal support staff. There are role shifts, and this is also another, or part from teacher professional learning, of course, but it's a very important part and still maybe a challenge, but it's a very rewarding challenge. So I think this will be, collaboration is also at the same time a very important tool for teacher professional learning. So I think these were the main challenges.
Thank you very much. Let's move still in the environment of the educational stakeholders. Edwin, you are from the perspective of school heads. What do you see as the main challenge in inclusion in schools?
Well, where to start? Whole libraries have been written about inclusive education, but it's not so straightforward because what do we really mean by inclusive? Schools call themselves inclusive if anybody with a disability can function within the school, or if they are prepared to welcome immigrants, for example. But yeah, does this really answer inclusive education? I think that the move will be towards inclusion as part of being a fully individualized education, which is very complicated, of course. For that, we need to have many factors that have to come together. So it's a bit of a complicated process. But yeah, I was thinking of the inclusion efforts need to aim for preserving diversity of skills, knowledge, and mindsets. But children also have to learn how to live in diverse communities, and teachers as well. We need to have a high level of flexibility, and most of all, I think teachers have to stop being what they have historically been, which is the people they think that they have to impart knowledge and they have to teach, but they actually have to become part of the classroom and become learning facilitators and even learners themselves. It's good that we're here in the lifelong learning platform as well. I think that's the main thing. Teachers should become, they should not just open up to saying, yeah, we are inclusive, but they should really become part of the classroom and immerse themselves in the thought world of the pupils. So it's a bit of a complicated issue for us as a school heads association.
Of course, it's not an obvious thing to look into, and you cannot solve it with a magic trick.
No.
Thank you very much. Let's look at the policy perspective. Guillaume, from the perspective of the Commission, the DG EAC, do you have an idea that this is the main challenge that you want to tackle first?
Well, there, as the other intervenant pointed to, and you pointed to yourself, there are a lot of challenges, and it's difficult to find one of them. But one of the main challenges is still the influence of socioeconomic background on school success and achievements of the participants. Across all Europe, educational experience of individuals follow social patterns, and rural areas are falling behind, and students with migrant background still have worse school experience. And the last PISA results underlines this fact, and the COVID crisis has exacerbated these differences, and this needs to be tackled under European policy, and this is a part of what we propose to tackle in the European education area. A second point, which was also mentioned by Annette, was providing teachers with the competence they need to work in an inclusive school and with inclusive education. And teachers are the backbone of education, and without teachers, trainers, educators, there is no innovation, no inclusion, and no transformational experiences for learners. So we need to see at what skills the teachers need and to support them and help them to acquire these skills. And this is also one of the area where the education, the communication on achieving the European education area, I still have a problem with that name, wants to focus. There is a dimension on CPD and continuous development, professional development for teacher, but also the initial teacher training. And this is a very important part of inclusive education.
Thank you. And lastly, Susanne, what's your take on that? Is there a priority in German presidency maybe that you will be tackling first when it comes to challenges in inclusion?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I can relate to everything what has been said. I can, well, as I said before, inclusion is a transversal topic. It is not a new topic. And I can assure you that also at system level in all member states, we work since many, many years on the topic. And that was obviously also clear when you listen to Edwin and also to Annette, that this is not something we just start now, but we work on that since many, many years. So we thank the Commission, of course, to put this on the agenda again. And as I said before, as inclusion is a transversal topic, you can find it in various files or papers which are negotiated at European level. And that already means that there is an agreement in all member states that this is important. I would like to underline that what Nadine said in the beginning, that would be for me also the biggest challenge when it comes to socioeconomic background. And that is at the same time very, very difficult to tackle. And typical for education in general is that every measure and every reform takes very long. To begin with a reform at system level, there needs to be a strong political decision. And when it comes to inclusion, it has to be really a priority at the system level, so at the member state level, that this is an agreed priority and that we really want to tackle school success for all. Or we had other slogans like no child left behind. And as simple as that sounds, for me, this is it. Then to put that into practice, it needs a lot of perseverance. It needs, of course, investment as well. When it comes to teacher training, when it comes to facilities, when it comes to extra courses, for instance, let's look, I mean, I come from Germany, I come from Hamburg, so I can tell you we work on that issue since very, very long time. We have schools where we have a percentage of 90% of children with migrant background. So you can imagine that we work a lot on language acquisition to get the basis for school success. So you have a variety of subtopics in order to get really this approach of inclusive education for all. And of course, also other topics like disabled children, what are the demands in that field. And as has been said before, it is a challenge in rural areas, and it is a challenge in all the big European cities, where we have a lot of disparities between poverty and rich areas. So there you go, with a very high demand. But interestingly, in these recent discussions right now during our presidency in the Education Committee, it was for me quite clear, and this will be followed up by the Portuguese colleagues who have their presidency from January on, the approach and the explicit mentioning of that we have to have inclusive education. That was a very strong commitment from all member states. So that is maybe also a positive note on the issue. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We have been together for an hour and a half nearly since we started the event. So for the sake of our mental and physical health, let's take now a short break. I invite everyone to take 10 minutes, switch off your camera to protect your internet bandwidth, switch off your microphone so that we don't hear the sounds of you making tea, coffee and stretching, and make sure you get up, move away from your screen, do a little stretch, have a little walk, and we are back here in 10 minutes, so 4:32 European time, where I'm sitting now in Brussels. We will be continuing with our panel and with your questions to the panelists as well. Thank you for this first round. See you in 10 minutes. I have Susanne having her video big on my screen in the spotlight after being the last speaking before the break. And that's fantastic, because actually I want to direct my next question in a first place to you. We've been talking about those different challenges, and all of you mentioned that, of course, it's not an easy issue. It's hard to pinpoint one challenge, and there is no magic cure. And things cannot be solved with easy slogans, but sometimes those slogans are actually as simple as theoretically it should get. Now, complexity of the issue is that challenge at EU level concerns also definition of inclusiveness and inclusive education. Are we talking about gender, identity and sexual orientation, refugee students, learning disabilities? There are different levels, right? So how could the European Union use its position to achieve a consensus among member states and ensure that a common conceptualization of inclusion is mainstreamed through tools such as the European semester, for example, or other tools? Susanne.
Yes, thank you. This is, well, kind of a difficult question, because the EU, this is already the first question mark. What or who is the EU? I think Guillaume mentioned that in a paraphrase. When we talk about education at EU level, we talk about the principle of subsidiarity. What does this mean? That means that the EU, whoever this could be in that way, has no competence when it comes to education. But education lies in the full decision and responsibility of every member state. So that is the frame we are working in. That is really important, because especially when it comes to everything, be it curricular design, structure of the system, and total teacher training, this is up to every member state to decide how this should be done in its member state. That has, of course, an effect on what is European cooperation. What we do actually at European level in all these topics and files is that we cooperate. There are certain structures. For the time being, it is the Education and Training Strategy 2020. And under this heading, there are working groups on various topics, And that is exactly the way where colleagues from the member states meet, exchange, and of course, by exchanging, by meeting, develop further the topics. So meaning that is what we always call a soft governance. That is by exchanging on the topics. Of course, this has an influence back on what will be taken up in the member states. And there is a common approach, and there is a sharing of challenges of how is the best way forward. And that will be followed up in what Guillaume has mentioned, the future European education area, which is a big word, where we just start the discussions what that could be. So I would say that is, although it sounds maybe not, or it is might not be sufficient for some of you, but to my experience, and I work at that level since very long time, it works. Because you would want to know how the neighbor does. That is human nature. And if the neighbor does better, then you would go thinking, oh, how could I do that I'm as good as my neighbor? And actually, that happens in all kinds of contexts. You all know that the OECD, we work a lot as well with the OECD, and the OECD does large-scale assessments. So that already means that we want to have data to know how good we perform. And as soon as you collect data, there is always a ranking. So, for instance, in Germany, it was recently clear we need to go to Finland to see how they do, because they do so good. So they do so well. So there you see, that is a way of cooperating. The decision will be taken in the member state, but still we go back. We have our regular meetings of education ministers. They share actually a good example in that. This a very difficult example of the COVID-19 crisis, because since the beginning of the year, every presidency sends around a questionnaire with all kinds of questions to the member states. How do you cope? How do you do? What do you do? What are you doing? School closures? If yes, what is the decision process, etc., etc.? What are your hygienic measures, etc.? How do you deal with distance learning? And the results of these questionnaires, which are updated about every 2 weeks, we always use the results whenever we have an education minister meeting. And we have realized that the education ministers appreciate a lot this little exchange, because they say, well, this is very important for myself when I have to take the next political decision. So there again, this is a small example where you see it works. Although the decision is at member state level, the cooperation at European level works well. And I would certainly agree with Guillaume saying we can do more. And if we want to have a European education area where we have a common European approach, then we are all working towards that idea on a variety of topics, and of course also when it comes to inclusion. And, well, I think as I said before, because there is a common agreement among colleagues in the education committee, who represent the member states there, that inclusion has to be streamlined. I think we are on a good way to make this very, very clear that we want to have an inclusive approach. In every educational sector, which actually this is also an aspect which is important in every educational sector.
Every education sector. Thank you very much, Susanna. And since you brought up the European education area that Guillaume mentioned earlier, I wanted to come to you from the perspective of Commission, Guillaume. What can be done there at EU level?
Susanna already explained how it works, and I fully agree with everything she mentioned. We have the principle of subsidiarity, which means that we don't have a decision at the European Commission. We just propose and help member states and support them in their policies. Where we have a consensus on a common conceptualization might be the Council recommendation, because that's where the results of the different peer learning events and the different working group experts are discussed with the member states, and where the member state will afterwards adopt the recommendation and make theirs this consensus. So if you're looking for definition and common approach, then the Council recommendation are a basic document that helps you to conceptualize inclusion.
So I'm obviously turning now to Annette. There is a very contextualized question from one of people in the audience. Polish Minister of Education mentioned lately that professional development for in-service teachers is not really needed. What would be your reaction to that political statement from the Minister of Education in one of the member states?
Well, I would say I don't know the context in which this was said, but with regard to inclusion, we see that there is many teachers are still very much afraid of working in inclusive education. There is a fear of difference, of diversity, and so it is important to enhance the self-efficacy beliefs of teachers. So there is really a need for continuous professional development for teachers in many different ways. Maybe this remark was made in a context of that you don't need extra qualifications or very formal continuous education. There are, of course, many forms of teacher professional learning in continuing professional education, but well, our findings really clearly say that it is very important to have a continuous, to have many opportunities along a teacher career for teacher professional learning, very much in collaborative ways also. And we see very good examples, or we saw very good examples of teacher professional learning where you have combinations of pre-service teachers, in-service teachers working together. And this is professional learning for teachers, for experienced teachers as well, for beginning teachers, for experienced teachers. Everyone is working together and is learning at the same time. But it should be valued as teacher professional learning, because otherwise it's a different status, and you get a different idea of teachers, and teachers see themselves as having different roles. While if you see this as collaborative teacher professional learning, and it's team learning, and you really get shared responsibilities in this way. So it is a continuous activity. But maybe this was said in a way that it was a suggestion about less or a different way of formal qualifications, which can of course be different in many countries. But the main point is that continuous learning remains important. Yes.
Great. Thank you for referring back to that. I have quite some questions from the audience. I have 3 that in one or another way refer to parents. Another important stakeholder in education. We do not have in the panel a representative from parents associations. Nevertheless, one way or another, you are all working with them. There is a question, how are you planning to take parents on board in these planned developments? There is a question, do you think parents want schools to be truly inclusive? And then another one, someone mentioning that there was a specific case in the UK where gender dismantling education has been strongly opposed by the parents and religious organizations. So how to find a solution to accommodate all? So I would like, in this last question, look briefly on parents, and I'm not sure, Edwin, if you would be keen on telling from the perspective of school heads, how do you deal with parents as an educational stakeholder in matters respecting inclusion?
Well, we work closely together with an organization called Parents International. Well, they're a worldwide network, of course. They are part of our programs as well. So we try and include parents through that organization. I think every school or even every school community may have their own parents associations or parent groups that they can have talks with and promote inclusion in schools. I mean, there's not a global, I would say, collaboration which trickles down through ESHA as such, or through the European Union, or through any government. So it's a bit a grassroots level which goes up instead of where inclusion programs, for example, are generally top down, and that's a bit where the problems lie. We try in these inclusion projects or any kind of projects, we try to get programs into our classrooms from the bottom up, and it's difficult to accept. I mean, the guidance from the European Union and the national governments. So we are a bit in between as school heads and teachers, and between beautiful projects as well as governments that are quite demanding, and European Union that wants to implement all kinds of wonderful ideas. So yeah, again, it's a bit of a complicated issue.
Balancing game indeed.
Yeah, balancing
All right.
is difficult. But I mean,
thank you very much.
In terms of parents associations, I would recommend to work with Parents International.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. There is a couple more questions from the audience, but we will be moving soon to a more active participation from all of our audience. So I want to thank all the panelists again for taking time responding those questions and interacting with us. And I want to bounce my last question off everyone in the audience. So when you will go in the Slido, there will be now an open poll, and we want to ask you a specific question. We are meeting online instead of meeting in person during this event because of the COVID pandemic. And in the EP resolution from October 2020 on the future of European education in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is mentioned clearly that 10% of pupils could not access distance education from home because they didn't have the infrastructure, the computer, the sufficient broadband. It shows more than ever now that digitalization and inclusion should go hand in hand. And nevertheless, digitalization is getting a lot more attention, while inclusion still is not addressed enough. And we all know that exclusion, with its many forms, is not only damaging for society, but also economically, actually. So the question to everyone now, our panelists, just as everyone who is in the audience, why do you think it is that inclusion doesn't get the same attention as digitalization with the situation as we have it? And we're seeing already some responses. It is not profitable. That's a very sour reflection, but might be quite a realistic one. I would be keen to hear more responses from you. If one of the panelists wants to still pick up a microphone and address it directly, do it. I invite all the audience to please type in your responses in the Slido so that we can also read them. There is no direct financial benefit of it. Inclusion is political, highly loaded ideologically, term theoretically, and practically. Most part of schools think it's impossible to get to inclusion without a lot of expensive resources. So we're back to the financial issue. It requires a true change in mentalities, include caring and taking care of the unprivileged. Also a very to-the-point observation. Not so trendy question marks, says someone from the audience as well. We're also finding ourselves in a crisis situation, someone says. Is there anyone from the panel that would like to react quickly to that? Then you can open your microphone.
I can speak super fast. So I think it's got a lot to do with how like if you look at the people who are given the attention to digitalization, it's obviously like the people who make the policies and the people who are like at the head of governments, etc., and people who like have all the like have this setup where like they are not the people who are not included in society, but everybody can relate to having a time where they have problems with digitalization. Like either if you're thinking about like a time where you had really bad service or a time whenever your technology just wouldn't work for you, like, everybody can relate to that. Whereas the people who are the policymakers, they can't relate to being outside the circle. They can't relate to not being the people who are included. So I think, to be honest with you, that is why inclusion doesn't get the same attention, is because people can't relate to it, so they don't feel any like empathy to these people because they can't put themselves in that situation. So that is my opinion.
Thank you very much, Nadine, for sharing your opinion. Thank you to everyone who's participating also via Slido. We will take more of your contributions. The Slido remain open. Again, thanks to all the panelists. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for giving your time. I hope you can stay with us still for the next part of our event, because we will move now to a breakout room exercise. We will have 9 breakout rooms where we will have presentation of good practices on inclusion, either from the project countries, specific project countries that Irini was introducing at the beginning, or from the specific educational stakeholders. So we will have, for example, students presenting certain good practices. In each of the breakout rooms, we will also have space for you, each and every one of you present in this meeting, to give us some ideas on good practices that you might have come across, but also we would like to gather your input on recommendation for policymakers and education stakeholders that they can be included in this meeting and in this whole project outcome. So I will now invite my colleague Sven to walk you through yet another bit of technology that we'll be using, since we want the effects of your work to be recorded visually in a tool that we called Mural, and each of you will have a chance to do it yourselves.
Yes, so good afternoon again. So this is the mural environment you will be working it. You have to imagine it like a giant whiteboard that is hanging in your office and that you can actually work with. So in order to make sure that you can use this properly, I'm going to show you quickly the features. So the first thing you need to know is that you're going to be divided in different groups, 9 different groups to be specific. And each group, as you can see, has a different board within the board. So the first task is, how do I go to my board? Because now it's obviously too small. So what you do is, you click here on this icon on the right top. It looks a bit like a list. And if you click on that, a menu will appear, and there you will see all the different groups. So imagine I'm from group number 5. If I click on number 5, it will zoom in automatically on that group. And then I can close this here so I have a bit more space to actually work. And here you see the work that you're going to do. If you want to zoom in more, you can use here on the right bottom, there's a little panel. If you click on the plus, it will get bigger. So you can really zoom in on the different poses. If you click on the minus, it will get smaller. You can also use the hand. If you click on that, you can actually move around. Don't forget to put it off afterwards, otherwise you will not be able to type anything. So then the second step is obviously, how do you write in these post-its? Very simple. I will zoom in on one post-it here, and I will double click on the post-it, and you see there's a cursor blinking now. So when the cursor is blinking, I can write my text in it, then I unselect by clicking somewhere else, not on the post-it. Imagine you made a mistake, you go back to the post-it, you hover over it, you double click, there's a cursor again, and I can remove and say something else. Voila. If you want to make a new post-it, that's also very possible. I'll just double click here on the empty spot and a new post-it will arrive. If I make a post-it over here, you will see it will become a round one, just like you had here before. Voila. You can also make a post-it by clicking here and then adding one. And by clicking, it will add one here as well. But actually, you don't need that. You can just make new ones by double clicking. Ella, did I forget something about my mural explanation?
You did not, but I have one more important bit to add to that. It was also shared on the chat. You will get the link to access the mural once you're in your breakout rooms. Every room has a presenter of the good practice, but you also have a facilitator from the project partners team. They will help you through with the mural. They will give you the access link. They will walk you through the process. And also, please remember, if you're struggling on mural because the connection is not good, it's a bit of technology that confuses you, don't spend too much time trying to figure it out, but invest this time in having an in-depth discussion so that we get your input. So first, take your time, focus on speaker's presentation, and only then we jump into mural and we gather your input. We will spend about 35 to 40 minutes in those breakout rooms, and then we will have a report out so that you will be hearing from the facilitators and rapporteurs from different groups what was said where. Thank you, Sver, for the explanation. Already thank you to those of you who will now present and facilitate in the breakout rooms. And again, everyone, please, as you see a little pop-up on your screen now inviting you to the breakout room, click join, accept the invitation so that you can spend the time working. Sven?
Okay, I will open the rooms now. Have a good time and see you in a big half an hour. Bye-bye.
Welcome back, everyone. I know it has been probably a very sharp transition from the breakout room into back into the plenary. This is the good and the bad side of those online meetings. If we would be meeting in real life, it might have taken a while to find everyone in the breakout rooms and stop your discussions like this. And the software did it for us. Thank you. We've been observing the mural as you've been working there, and we see a lot of contributions. I see that some of you are still finishing up your last thought. It's great. Let's move to the report out so that we can briefly hear from the rapporteurs from each of the groups. What have you been discussing at? My colleague Sven will put for you on the screen a little timer of 1 minute 30 seconds per person, so no pressure. But we need to make sure we time it right and stick to our planning. From the first group, Fedra, who was the facilitator there, please share a couple of ideas.
Okay, so we heard Sylvia Kimidu present the in-school project and how it continued during lockdown. And she shared with us how we tried to have an inclusive classroom by mixing up different levels and by continuing to have representatives from each class in order to assimilate the information for the people who couldn't have access to the internet. Based on that, then we had some good contributions and mainly about good practices, as you can see on the board, on a project to fight bullying on the left there, and we talked about good practices in sense of training of teachers and the needs that need to be covered. And then we started talking about recommendations and what would be necessary for teachers and stakeholders in the school to have. And we talked about the promotion. There were suggestions about making sure everybody's informed. So even on a local or national level, they should know what projects are around, the training for new teachers, and motivation for the schools themselves to participate.
I'll be stopping you here. I'm sorry for that. It's all right. Thank you for the presentation. Everyone has access to Mural, so we don't have to read through all the post-its, but please, remaining presenters, give us the flavor of what's been happening in the group. Thank you, Fedra, for being brave and being first to the floor. Let's hear from the group number 2. I'll have Maria presenting.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share the ideas that we share on our group about projects and initiatives. We get some ideas about the importance of get different subjects on schools, such as sports, arts, or intellectual activities to get really inclusive activities. In order to work with families also, it was the idea to do coffee breaks with parents from students and of inviting writers, politicians, scientists from minorities backgrounds to share with the students and with families their experience. We also talk about the importance of taking on account underprivileged countries, and on the EU level of to teachers the opportunity to upskill and exchange between them, and to promote good examples in order to spread them all around Europe. On national level, we mark the importance of take on account with a specialist on inclusion and the multilingual approach. And finally, take communities of practice. And I think that's it. You can share the rest on Mira.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we're moving to group 3 with Kate. Kate, I hope you're still with us.
Yes.
Will it be Kate presenting? Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm just going to feed back from Joanne, who presented about best practice at Foxcovert Primary School in Scotland. And I think the two things I really wanted to highlight was we talked about actually what a huge impact one inspiring teacher can make, and actually you can feel that there is a mountain to climb, and you can take part in a project like in school, or you can take part in a fantastic professional development program, or and feel very inspired, but feel like you can't make a difference. And actually we talked about how you really can. And we talked about the example at Foxcovert about how they use language that has become part of everyday language, so that children can actually articulate and talk about inclusion, that is about how they feel they should be included, and what a change that takes. And it takes time, but actually how inspiring a teacher can be. And we actually talked about one of the key things was that inclusion is not about talking about young people and children, it's about including them in visions, in groups, in policy, and actually how hard they've worked at the school there to do that. And so yeah, just a really great example. We're biased obviously because we've worked with them for many years, but they're a fantastic example of the challenges, but also how inspiring teachers can be. Thanks.
Thank you. Brilliant timing as well. I hope the timer is helping you instead of stressing you. Group number 4, Alia, one of the speakers.
Hi, thanks Ella. So we spoke about anti-racism as a pedagogical approach. It's a deep and complex and difficult and uncomfortable topic. So we only managed to skirt on the surface, but regardless came up with some really interesting approaches and discussions that mirror the complexity of the issue. So for example, the idea of context. One context can be very open to and ready to have these kinds of brave conversations about racism in their classrooms. And in other contexts, in fact, it's the whole structural societal environment makes people to have these conversations. So what would an anti-racist approach look like in different contexts? And we came to an agreement that it has to be different, but some of the underpinning and common seem to be emerging around dialoguing and having open spaces for dialogues in schools. So how do we manage to have these conversations and skill up young people and ourselves to have difficult conversations? And some proposals were made. You can see all of them on our mural on Group 4. So please follow the links and yeah.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. We can use those extra 5 seconds. Doretta with Group 5, what were your reflections and proposals?
Thank you. We share good practices of recepting, recruiting, and providing quality education for children with migrant and refugee background with Nao Koimoto, the Chief Education of UNICEF operating in Greece. We discussed about the support they need in order to be enrolled, to participate, to organize, to get involved in the learning activities. So some good practices are similar to other fields like inclusive education for disabilities. Because what we have discussed is about the basic principles, which means that we need to provide the socio-emotional learning, skill up for students for life skills and social skills and everything. So we found that there is a need for interoperability of all institutions, a need of a good monitoring system at the EU level and also local level, and also a methodology to teachers' capacity building and cultural awareness raising. Thank you.
Brilliant timing. Thank you very much, Doretta. Sounds like it was rehearsed, but it wasn't, since the results were creation of the group just now. Maria with Group 5, would you share with us your work and the one of your colleagues in the group? Group 6, I'm sorry. Maria with Group 6.
Okay. So, hello. We have discussed about some really good practices. For example, the Cap sur l'école, the Magic Sense, which is a program that tries to enhance the skill and competencies of teachers, and also the In-Edu, which is a program with interactive activities for all the school stakeholders. We're actually preventing marginalization and also countering inequality. About EU level, we talk about that it will be really important if you can support civil society groups in countries that actually struggle more with programs, for example, Poland or Greece. Also, in national level, about policy makers, we talk about the concept of inclusion and how important it is to set a common ground and not to exclude any group of this concept of inclusion, let's say. Also to find a coordinator for inclusive policies, and for the school stakeholders, we talk about how important it is every stakeholder to believe that can change. He can do or she can do things that can change the situation. Improve in a way communication among the school stakeholders, create a common strategy, and also acknowledge complexity inside the school setting. This is what we have discussed.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Maria. And I'll invite now Grzegorz, who was facilitating Group 7, also working with one of the project partners.
Okay, so we were having that honor to listen to Mirka, the teacher from Zabrze, who presented a good practice based on movie screenings and discussions. So it was like a movie club. Students like it a lot. So to that extent that although that particular practice was an element of a month of inclusion in Polish case, and she is now continuing that with her students. So when we were discussing about this, we were talking about how difficult it is to talk about issues of inclusion, because they are highly political, but they are also very emotional. So our recommendations include two levels. One, diagnose of needs and in schools and support for the projects that answer those needs, and guarantee that protection and care of those emotional situations, and autonomy for teachers and students. So this is one set of recommendations. And second set of recommendations about European Union and unconditional support for inclusion education, inclusion as a policy, and inclusion as a practical approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this clear presentation and bringing up a good practice. From group number 8, the presenter in this group, Erika, the floor is yours.
Yes, the first part we were talking about our project. I shortly introduce our project that is related to teachers' learning. And after that, we were talking about
Erika, I seem to have lost you.
Can you hear me now? It's better?
Yes,
yeah, okay.
It's better, yes.
The teacher education in general, the teacher problems at European level. During the group discussion, we was mentioning these curriculum questions related to inclusion, with what the teachers faced with, and school and society relationships have to focus on. And as at European level, we were talking about how this teacher mobility and knowledge sharing can be encouraged between the member states, and at national level, how teacher competencies can help to develop more, prepare more, to help to develop student teachers to be more prepared to this inclusion questions at school level. I think that was all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this despite struggling with technology a bit. We all have that challenge. Thank you. And Alexandra from group number 9.
Hello from group number 9, starting with sharing good practices. As two school student activists were doing the introduction, we talked about the snowball effect of in-school workshops, peer education, and about being listened to. But also about the importance of pushing forward important policies that enable inclusion. We also talked a lot about COVID, where digitalization is made the bigger topic than inclusion. So what does it need to have inclusive education? It needs a good budget, not only good ideas, in order to close the existing gaps in our education system. It's important to involve stakeholders. For example, that the Commission asks school students what they need, because thinking about it with others, but some examples, sharing resources, and some very cool projects were raised from participants, creating this space for all EU countries, because sometimes seeing the bigger pictures help reflecting its own and sharing those best practices. And it definitely needs collaboration between schools, between teachers. Someone said also collaboration between universities and school. And to close, diversity was also an important topic. There were school books embracing diverse teachers and giving room for diversity and inclusion in the curricula. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you to all the presenters and all of you who've been working in groups. We are approaching the end of our meeting today. Thank you for spending last 3 hours with us. I would like to show you now, and Sven, please share the visuals with us now from Mural, what my colleague Joyce, working behind the scenes, has been preparing. She did visual notes, graphic recording of the presentations, the keynote speech from Cesar, also from our panel, and you will also find them in Mural. I hope we can see them on the shared screen in a minute. There we are. So we have those notes taken by Joyce. Couple of ideas that have been brought by Cesar. We have notes from the initial presentations from Irini and Shan. We also have key thoughts shared by our panelists in response to the questions that we've been putting to them. So you can go back to this at all times, as this is also in the mural. The mural will be open still for your access, and we will also create a set of documents and share it with you after the event based on the mural and on your input, because all those presentations that you've given now have much more content recorded on the sticky notes in the mural itself. Thank you, Joyce, for those fantastic graphic notes. One more request I have for all of you is to go into Slido now again, because there is a little poll that is asking for your reflections after this afternoon of listening and sharing and participating. Couple of questions that will help us to pick up what are you taking away with you from this event, and also how can the partners of the project move forward with working on continuation of the project. So please take a minute now and look into the survey. You should see it now. We only see here the title of it, but on your devices, when you go into Slido, you see already the questions that we are posing there for you. And there will be also an evaluation survey circulated to you via your emails. I know it's not always an easy thing to take time to fill in this evaluation survey that comes a couple of days after the event, but it's really important for the project partners to be able to collect your points and make sure that the continuation of the project, the further events, and your work on inclusion is done in the best way possible. So your feedback will be very valued. Please take your time to respond to the email survey as well. This is it from my side, but we still have two important people that want to address you closing this event now. Let me invite Anastasia Andritsou from the British Council, the country director of British Council Greece, who was leading this project. Anastasia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ella. What can I say? A really fascinating afternoon with a lot of ideas and challenges that hopefully provided food for thought and inspiration to all participants. As we discussed today, inclusion is a never-ending journey. It's a process, and hopefully today's event contributed positively to this process. With the inspirational talk from Cesar, the panel discussion with our experts, but also the exchange of best practices and ideas in the breakout sessions, the purpose was to create a community of practice, a living network of like-minded individuals, and a space for them to feel comfortable to discuss very uncomfortable issues. So I would really hope that this network, today's event, it's not the final event of our project. I would say that it's the beginning of a creative and exciting exchange of ideas that will go on for many, many years. So I would like to congratulate all the contributors and the educators and partners that we have in today's event. Please keep doing the amazing work that you do in your schools, your communities, your countries, and spread the word of inclusive education. Thank you very much, especially Lifelong Learning Platform for organizing and coordinating everything. I wish so much to be in Brussels for today's event, but I think this platform today provided a nice substitute for our interaction. And I want to thank all our partners in the project, associate partners, and people that contributed in every single way for the success of the project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. And as you mentioned, Lifelong Learning Platform, let's have a closing word from Arja Grafenberg, the president of the Lifelong Learning Platform.
Thank you very much, Ella. And thank you very much for a very powerful message, Anastasia. As the president of the LLLP, I have the honor to conclude this event today that has been so rich in exchanges and learning about the various outputs of the in-school project, but that has also brought some news about other projects and other initiatives that are going on. As a former board member and president of the European Parents Association, of course, the successful inclusion of all children in our diverse education systems all over Europe is a topic that is very dear to my heart. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, I attended a webinar where another in-school project was presented just with an H, so the real writing of school in English, in the framework of the Council of Europe's Education for Democracy strategy. And I think there are lots of initiatives out there, and I hope that we can create more synergies between the projects, because I think this is also something that is very, very necessary. It was very interesting to see and compare today the different perspectives and approaches to achieve the same goal in the end. We don't want to leave any child behind. And that is what all parents wish for their children. And this is also what we need for society: cohesion and peaceful living together. I say that as an Austrian living in Vienna, where we have suffered from a terrorist attack just a couple of days ago, and where we could see what it can make out of a young person if you're not included. I mean, the young man was only 20 years old. He had obviously never found his place in society. He had been left behind. And then these children get picked up by the wrong people, whether it's drugs or alcohol. They are manipulated. They are taken into a direction that nobody wants. So this is a really important issue, not only for these young people themselves, but for our society as a whole, because otherwise we're all under this threat. So this might also be an argument when you ask for resources. That was mentioned also today, that this is a very important issue to get resources for all these projects. If you can tell your governments and responsible people that actually it is much more costly to repair the damage than to invest preventively in inclusion. As the outcome of this project has sparked such a lot of interest, more than 200 people had actually signed up for this event this afternoon. You'll be happy to hear that there will be an in-school 2 project that will focus on teacher training. Annette, I think, mentioned that already today. So participants who expressed their interest in registering to receiving more news, they will receive news about this project. I would also like to thank all the speakers, of course, specifically Cesar Bono for his inspiring keynote, but also to the members of our panel for their valuable insights and the great debate. Thank you to all the partners of the project for their dedicated work and those rather complicated last month under the strain of the pandemic. Thank you for a beautifully orchestrated event to our moderator, Ella, and her great team at Visuality. And of course, to my team at the Secretariat at the Lifelong Learning Platform, especially to Pauline, but also to everybody else who has participated today and who has worked in the background to make this all happen. Last but not least, I would like to extend a very warm invitation to the upcoming Lifelong Learning Week from 30th of November to 4th of December, when we will be hosting 13 interesting events on education and lifelong learning. A milestone in the EU. I think somebody will post a link into the chat, I hope. Otherwise, you can also find it on the LLLP website. If you're interested in parental work, because there have been several questions on parents as well, I would like to invite you to a webinar that the European Parents Association will organize this Saturday on digital citizenship and media literacy, which are also hot topics in this digitalized world and go hand in hand actually with the topic of inclusion. Yes, and then I would like to thank all of you for your participation, for your patience, being with us for more than 3 hours. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully at the LLL Week or maybe also at some other event. Thank you very much for spending this afternoon with us and for your participation. The mural will still be open, as Ella announced, so if you haven't had time to write all your comments in there, you are welcome to use the link and still post in there. Thank you very much indeed. Have a nice evening, and please all stay safe in these uncertain times. Thank you.